Hi, welcome to Eye Openers. I'm your host, Brittany Drozd, and each week I bring you insightful conversations with entrepreneurs that will help you make more money, become a strong leader, and build a business culture that you're proud of. Grab your coffee and let's dive in. Hello, and thank you so much for joining us today on Eye Openers. So we are trying this new segment of Eye Openers in the afternoon when you're having your afternoon, sluggish, not super motivated to finish the day out. But we are here to help you with some really great insights and breakthroughs that people have had in their journey through leadership, through entrepreneurship, through being in business and figuring out how it all works. Now, today I have Charlie Ledbetter with me. Thanks so much for joining us, Charlie.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
So my first question always, what are you drinking today?
So I've already had my espresso, so that's done. And now I'm having ice water with lemon. It's in a kind of fancy cocktail glass, so it's sort of practicality with a bit of flourish. But I like the water, the simplicity of it, and it's thirst quenching.
Yeah. And the lemon too gives you a little bit of zing there. Keeps you awake, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Keeps
love
me hydrated, keeps me awake.
Well, and I'm the same. I'm a water girl in the afternoon. I really stop my coffee at noon and I do that for my sleep. But I find that seriously, water can be one of the most eye-opening things because when we're properly hydrated, our energy is on point, our focus can be there. And I know for me, I definitely make sure I'm well hydrated on those days. So enough about us and the water. I want to give you a proper introduction. Charlie has a really fascinating bio where he says he has been a shapeshifter for most of his career. You are part artist, part scientist, and part writer, but you found that you're most successful when you're able to view those problems through all of those lenses they help keep you grounded and allow you to make connections between complex ideas. So I really hope we're going to dive more into that, how you integrate those things and maybe how you've come to really create that model for yourself over time.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. My first impulse in life, primary impulse, has been I'm an artist by background and training, but I always did science and art growing up. For a long time, about 12 plus years in New York City, I worked for this kind of the echelon of artists who sell their work for multiple $1 million and pay other people to actually make it for them. So I was one of those. And then leaving New York City in 2011, I had to kind of reimagine what my working life and career arc was going to be, which took some doing. And it's no small feat, I think, to kind of pivot like that when you have to. So
the word of the year, pivot, or the word of 2020 anyways.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So it, as I kind of went through, sort of followed where my interests were, I realized that I've always liked being kind of a leader in some sense. And in my life as an artist, I was also a studio manager, and really excited about kind of building team morale and getting people motivated and keeping them motivated to kind of do the best work that they can. So that then kind of segued into doing project management, and which led ultimately to the past sort of 6+ years of being a producer at an experience design company here in Rhode Island called TellArt.
So let me ask you more about that, right? So tell me what story you feel comfortable sharing here, because this one's kind of tricky. But what did you learn from a past mentor or a boss that has either created a ton of insight for you or changed the way that you show up as a leader?
I have been lucky enough to work for and with some really brilliant, but also humble leaders. and leaders of these companies who just do amazing work, but you don't have the sense of sort of bravado that comes along, that can often kind of come along with doing that kind of work. So the thing that I have always tried to do is to recognize that I can be a leader and learn at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Not always about, being an expert in something. It's about showing up, asking as many questions as you can to get the more complete understanding, and then clearing a path for your team to sort of succeed because they are great at doing what they do. It's not the hierarchy, in some sense, either doesn't exist or shouldn't always exist for its own construct.
You brought up a great point about bravado. And I'm wondering, because I know you've worked in some different industries, what do you believe is different about maybe business in the art world or design world, and how that impacts leadership, right? That it might be different in other industries?
Well, I think in the art and design world, the need to kind of pivot and to be adaptable is sort of intrinsic to those fields to some degree. I mean, it can also go the other way, but when you're dealing with a more kind of corporate environment or something that is more kind of engineering focused, there's a level of comfort in the people's roles that they are in, which is completely understandable. But I find that can make it difficult to sort of move outside of your swim lane to some degree.
Mm-hmm.
So, and everyone kind of performs their task and does it the best that they can. But oftentimes those two swim lanes that, your teams are in, they never really intersect. And so there's this whole untapped communication area that just doesn't always happen. Yeah.
Okay. So there's a gap there that maybe is problematic to the organization in some way. Right.
It can be. It can make it difficult to innovate. I'll say that.
Okay. And that's really, I don't know, hilarious because you're in design, which is about innovation, right?
Right.
So how do we solve that problem? Or where have you seen it done better?
Well, I think it can often take being an outsider and going into an organization with fresh eyes, and without, you try not to arrive with sort of pre-constructed assumptions. You can see things for how they're operating, and then don't be afraid to talk about those things. I mean, I have found in the past sort of 6-7 years of being in this world is that when we come in as outside consultants, it can be difficult sometimes to get everybody in the same room together to also put aside their egos. And I think you have to be a little bit of a ringleader to some degree, and kind of non-judgmental about who's coming to the table and what they're bringing, because you don't always know what's going to be valuable and what's not.
That's one of my favorite quotes by Walt Whitman: be curious, not judgmental.
Mm.
And I feel like it's so important in leadership, no matter what industry that you're in, that we just stay curious and stay open-minded instead of thinking we're the expert, we always know best, or that our team won't have value to add, which they absolutely should. And if you feel that, you shouldn't be a leader, or you're leading the wrong people, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So what would you say are some early mistakes, or just an early mistake you made in being a leader, or really just in the design world, that now you know better?
Well, I think it mostly had to do, kind of stepping into this role early on. It was a big step up for me. And so I really felt like I needed to get it right the first time and have it all be me kind of running the show, and everything sort of coming down on one person. So I would say that what I learned from that over time is that one person as a leader is great. You don't have to kind of take on everything in order to do that. In fact, it's a lot better if you ask for help if you need it. And if you good leadership, I have found your team will want to help you. You'll want to help each other. So yeah, I think that the thing that I have hopefully learned from that and kind of will continue to use going forward is to, just sort of rely on your team and also be sure to thank them.
Sure. Gosh, I think that's a really great point, is that sometimes we think we have to have it all figured out. And this has already come up more than once for me this week, and it's only Monday. So let's see where the week goes. But I feel like we take that on when we're in a leadership role, this idea of, it's almost like a paternal thing of like, I need to like know the answers. I need to take care of my people. I need to help them solve problems. But I feel like there's so much strength in being able to say, hey, I don't know.
Right.
Like I either don't know to the answer to that specific thing, or I'm not sure like what direction we're going. Because I feel that so often our team wants us to take the uncertainty out of something for them, show them the way, the path forward, whatever it is, in a specific design challenge, or really in something bigger than that. And I feel that when we are strong enough or confident enough really in ourselves to be able to say, I don't know, it opens up the doors for like a conversation that includes your team, that includes people beyond those in a C-suite or just a leadership role.
Right.
And it also, more importantly, I think, lends itself to creating a culture of real like honesty and candidness about, when you are in a position and you don't always have the answer, right? It's okay to say that, because my boss did it, right?
Right.
And when we're in that place, my gosh, that's when real innovation can come through, when we're honest enough to share that we don't have that answer. We need help, right? We need assistance in getting there.
Yeah, I mean, I have had some interesting experiences in dealing with. You mentioned the C-suite, and in my design life, as a producer and doing business development, I've met some people who are at the corporate level, and there's this whole sort of air of fear around them with other employees and kind of people lower on the rung. But stepping in there, realizing also that everybody just kind of wants to be human, or they respond to that.
Sure.
There's when you can kind of take away some of that artifice of those kind of constructs of roles. I mean, it's amazing that having these kind of corporate level people smiling, laughing, and everybody in the room is just sort of flabbergasted. Like, what kind of magic is this going on here? It's like, well, it's just about kind of being real, being human. You can't always be an expert in everything. So you're there to learn. You're there to learn from each other. So it sounds maybe a little bit like a kind of soft focus fairy tale, but I think that it's pretty valuable to have that kind of open embrace of being human, especially today with technology becoming more and more complex and more ubiquitous, and really sort of stepping in and performing a lot of the roles that have traditionally been done by the workforce. I think it's very, very important to maintain our sense of humanity during that time.
Right. Really great point, that especially in the last year, we've experienced this real great transition to relying more on tech. And now more than ever, it's important to show up with that humanness and inject it, whenever we can. But really, leadership should be modeling that. So tell me, what's your vision for the future of your industry?
It's tough sometimes to say what my industry is, because I think that for me, I love problem solving. And there are, as technology becomes more and more utilized in various industries, everything from manufacturing to communication to et cetera, et cetera. Um, I think going back to kind of embracing that human element, and being mindful of that, because things are progressing very, very rapidly. So I think that industry wide, across the board, I think that it is just important to maintain communication, and learn as much as you can, and yeah, test often, and prototype and test your ideas.
Awesome. So, what would you say are the greatest opportunity or challenge in front of you right now?
Mm, I think, well, for me, it has actually been one of being okay with trying to find balance to some degree. Um, I think that there there's so many opportunities to kind of get in, and work, and that is great and super meaningful. But I have found that it comes often at a cost. So trying to find ways to be okay with kind of stepping back a bit. I think you had something come up recently about having a hard stop to your day.
Mhm.
That really resonated with me, because it's hard to do. Um, but everybody is kind of being made to slow down these days. So I think it's a probably a realization that we're all having, that, we're able to have work lives, we're able to have family lives, and, it's always going to kind of rise and fall to some degree, but it's okay to not work 60 hours a week every week. So
But I think that permission or that tone or expectation is really set by the organization that you work for, and more specifically, maybe even your direct supervisor. I
yeah.
don't feel like everybody's getting that message.
Yeah. Well, right. That's absolutely true. And I, with that comes also the recognition that there are a great many people, particularly in service industries right now, who don't necessarily have that luxury, and we're relying on them because they're out there, packing our groceries and doing all of these
Yes.
wonderful human things that are helping us all out. But yeah, they may not be hearing that same sort of message of go find your balance. So
Right, right. I mean, or even in professional services in, a corporate world where, yeah, we thought we were going to get more time back, but instead, because we're not having those daily like collisions, run-ins, at the office, that because we have to schedule every single meeting, communication we have, it ends up taking more and more time out of the workday. And so there's challenges, right? And like this brings us back to the very beginning of the conversation: challenges in communication.
right.
Um, and I think that we really, really need leaders to kind of step up and be talking about it, um, allowing there to be room to explore it, right? To create innovations. Maybe we're not going to get it right the first time, but to just kind of allow those processes to experiment, like you said, and see what happens. But really, I feel like that messaging is so important. I know one week I'm like all about getting this project at the door, and the next week, oh, I just really need that time to rest and reset, or be with loved ones. And I mean, luckily, I have the freedom to kind of like vacillate as I need. Um, but I, but in organizations, we really have to be paying attention to those values and what we're communicating as a whole, and are we taking care of people in that way?
Right. And also because in whatever industry you're in, those impulses, the communication there is, all of that attitude is going to be built into your product ultimately. And you mentioning, these days that we're all kind of working remotely, not being able to just sort of have these sort of side conversations, these moments in between meetings where you're kind of bouncing ideas off of people or just kind of, shooting the breeze by the water cooler. It will be interesting, speaking back to the kind of future of the industries, technology as it continues, particular in the types of communication platforms that we're on right now, and also that my kids are all on school using. As a designer, being aware of those types of considerations and trying to sort of plan for those in some kind of way, building in some of those more sort of natural, nuanced interactions is going to be super important. And the types of things that are designed and put out into the world and that people are dealing with day in and day out, you have to have a certain amount of empathy for the things that people are going through, and build that into your product and into the design process.
Yeah, that was a really, really great point you made about that. Ultimately, those cultural elements and values get built into your product or service. So I hope everybody hears that and takes a second to think about what does that mean for you in your business, in your organization, and what can you do to either raise the awareness around that at your organization and think about how can we improve upon this.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Cool. So, Charlie, how can people contact you or find you?
Yep. So you can find me on LinkedIn, just Charlie Ledbetter. You can also reach me via email, which is just charlie@charlieledbetter.com. Feel free. Happy to. I love kind of getting lost in a sense in those types of communications and doing a bit of writing and just chatting.
Wow. What can we find on your website? I hear that obviously you've got your own site there.
My own website.
Yeah, charlieledbetter.com.
Yeah, it is under construction at the moment. It is actually speaking of pivots, it's a little bit, it has in the past been kind of primarily my artwork as a painter, but I'm trying to kind of make it a bit more well-rounded and kind of bringing in some of these other ideas and do a bit of writing there as well. So sort of a blog zone as well, I guess.
Awesome. So we could go there to see examples of your work and writings on topics such as this.
Yes.
Cool.
Just give me a little bit of time and I'll get it there.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. And thank you to Charlie for sharing your insights with us and your experiences along the way. They're super valuable. And the whole point of this show is to remind people that you're not going through these challenges alone, and that if we can just create one breakthrough, one insight that you have, it can seriously change the way you lead and show up in your organization. So thanks for being part of the conversation. Thanks for joining us this week on Eye Openers. Make sure to visit BrittanyDrose.com/podcast for this week's show notes. And if you found value in today's episode, I would so appreciate you giving us a rating on Apple Podcasts or share it with a friend. Also, don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. This all helps to support the show.